What's going on, America? It's Disney Dan here, back with a new Distory, one that celebrates freedom and America and the 4th of July. It's the evolution of Captain America. Are you ready for this? But this is different, okay? Disney and Marvel, they have an interesting relationship right now when it comes to the characters in theme parks, okay? So I wish that I could be presenting you a really fun, rich, detailed history of Captain America's costumes in the theme parks, but Captain America's really not in the theme parks, particularly because of the whole thing that's going on with Orlando and Universal Studios. Let's talk instead about the evolution of his costume in film.
Hi, I'm Captain America.
So as you guys think about Captain America as Chris Evans, he was around before that, right? You know, like when people were like, hey, remember before the Spider-Man movie, there was that weird Spider-Man TV show? Well, the same thing goes for Captain America. Hey, remember before the great Captain America movies, there was those weird Captain America TV shows? Whew.
The old people around here are my friends. And if I ever hear they have problems again, I'm coming after you. You got that?
First they're confused about why Johnny Storm is Captain America. Normally I'm showing you the original movie, like Peter Pan, and we're checking out his costume in the movie and then how it appears in the parks. But what's different about Captain America, what's different about superheroes, is that they have this rich culture, this rich history of many appearances done by many artists over many story arcs, over many adventures, over decades we're talking, right? And with Captain America, it's the same story, right? He's appeared many times in many different ways, under many different names, with many different missions. And in the films, as they begin to develop that character, sometimes they're taking little bits of inspiration from the comics, but sometimes they're taking huge design elements and they're throwing it right into the movie. If you go all the way back to Captain America's first appearance in 1941, it kind of echoes a little bit of what you might be familiar with Captain America in general. Captain America comes on the scene and he's just used as kind of propaganda, right? It's like, go out there and sell them war bonds. And that's what kind of Captain America began as a comic book. It was like, the war is on, we have to defeat the Nazis. And here's someone you can get behind, Captain America, to all you kids. Buy this comic and then, don't use your lunch money for a week and invest in war bonds. Because that's the kind of time we were in, you know what I mean? We were asking children for their lunch money so that we could defeat the Nazis. It's crazy. He was right on the scene in 1941. Bucky was right by his side, and you get that star-spangled chainmail, the wings on the helmet, that iconic shield. Well, not the iconic shield that you're familiar with, but like that, I don't know, what are those shields called? It's got to have a specific. Listen, you know that they have a name for those triangle pointy shields. A heater. There's a scrotum, a buckler, a kite, a heater. Cap eventually kind of settles into a Parma type shield. Yeah, it's not more, maybe a buckler, I don't know. Cap's original shield was a cross between a kite and a heater shield, which I just learned from the internet. Thank you, internet. Wait, we should confirm that with at least one other source. No, actually, that's fine. World War II rages on, and as it kind of wraps up, they literally, like fresh caught fish, they toss them on ice. Sometime later in the 60s, Avengers is rocking and rolling, and they thaw Cap out. And now Cap is a member of the Avengers, and that costume that he kind of dons in the 60s as he kind of takes on, that leading role in the Avengers is the costume that he gets forever. It's a classic. It's an American classic. You know what I mean? We should be saying nothing more American than Captain America's spandex, because that's the real truth of it. Pie is from France, guys, and French fries, I don't even know where they came from. We should be focusing on Captain America's leotard is what I'm trying to get at, because that's the true American spirit. But it's what he ends up wearing, the 60s, the 70s, 80s, literally to today, that those red gloves, those red boots, that chainmail with the stars and stripes, it's Cap. It's iconic.
Just a minute.
So the first time we actually get a good look at Captain America on film, he's in black and white. 1944, it's a serial played by Dick Purcell, and he's just rocking and rolling. He's punching some dudes in what is essentially one of those Lycra onesies. You know what I mean? That's essentially all it is. It's spandex, it's tight form-fitting. He's as far from the original idea of him as possible when it comes to, you know, no shield, no chainmail, gun. It literally is just a spandex suit. Back in the 40s, there wasn't like a whole hyper focus on whether or not this suit would be practical in the perspective of the real life storytelling of a superhero. That kind of idea of bringing these things into real life was just not even remotely a consideration back then. So it's just like, these are the shapes, these are the colors, these is the design that people are familiar with. Just get it on screen, please. It's funny, in the poster for the original serial, his star and the A are red instead of the white that we're all familiar with. It's like that guy who was making all the spaghetti western posters from Italy, he was just like, eh. The 70s, though, right? You know, we're coming off the high of having Batman on TV, being awesome. The Hulk, he's just like losing his mind and turning green and punching people. DC's like, get Wonder Woman on the screen. She's there and she's doing the spinning and all that kind of stuff. The 70s are kind of like this bizarre boom of made-for-TV miniseries, TV movies of superheroes. Similarly echoed the 2000s. You know what I mean? That kind of gold rush of like, get these rights. We've got to adapt these with what the audience wants. Captain America, 1979. Someone was just like, hey, what should we do with Captain America? Well, I don't know. He lives life on the edge. He's a dangerous man. He'll punch anyone who gets in his way. He's a little bit like Evel Knievel. I guess he is Evel Knievel. And so they just made Captain America Evel Knievel. They put him in a motorcycle helmet. They put him in a motorcycle helmet, this suit with like these suspenders and this spectacle. The movie is strange, right? And there's another one immediately after it. Captain America 2, Death Too Soon. You know. It's kind of like that Batman-esque kind of spandex material like we saw, you know, in the 40s, and this acrylic clear shield, because if it could be made out of clear acrylic in the 60s and the 70s, there was somebody there asking, well, why don't we? So 1990 rolls around. We're fresh off of Tim Burton's Batman, right? Tim Burton's Batman in 1989. Everyone's just like, what? This is gorgeous. This is beautiful. It's fantastic. Look at that Batman suit. It's all like rubbery and strong. He's got like defined definition. Studios everywhere kind of got the whole like that fever again to start making some superhero movies. It's like, oh man, we got this super successful thing. What can we bang out? Through a confusing turn of events and like in the 80s, the movie rights to Captain America wound up at 21st Century Film Corporation, and they had a ton of issues during production. They couldn't even really finish making the movie, and what they ended up having to do was sort of cobble together this film in post-production that, you know what, it brought to life Captain America, but it ended up going straight to home video, okay? We've got Red Skull. We've got like a hardcore Red Skull. You think that the reveal of Hugo Weaving, you should see this Red Skull, all right? There's this little bit of a horror B-movie unsettling look. And he's Italian, because that's a choice. And
It seems the Americans have made a poor choice for their champion. Pity him. He is like a child.
But they decided to put this Captain America in a rubber suit. He looks like they just found like a huge blue whoopee cushion and just like patterned it out. It's like, yeah, that'll do, I guess. It's just all of the, it's just, I just get like, the more I start to think about how uncomfortable it must be to wear a whole body rubber glove. Imagine like just slipping on a kitchen sink dish glove. And what's so interesting about the choice to put him in this rubber suit is like, at what point in time did anyone be like, hey, you know what army guys wear? Rubber. He's not a Navy SEAL. He's an infantryman. You know what I mean? He's running around on the front lines. Whoever was like, let's put him in rubber. But again, we're in that place where it's the 90s, it's fantasy, it's over the top, it's spectacle. There was nothing real about Burton's Batman. There was nothing that had to be real or practical about Captain America, other than the fact that he looks like a rubber glove fighting crime. We jump forward to the meat and potatoes of the Captain America lore, all right, what you're all familiar with. It's 2011. We've had Thor, we've had Iron Man, we've had a confusing turn of events happen with the Hulk, and now we're looking for the leader of the gang, and we get Captain America, the first Avenger in 2011. And his journey is interesting, right?
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
Stanley Tucci, with whatever wonderful accent he's using in this film, he stacks a very thin Chris Evans with some serum, some bright lights, and he comes out a hunk. What I don't understand is, like, what did it do? Make his bones grow? Because he literally gained a foot. I mean, like, did it just increase the amount of muscle space between each vertebrae and just spaced him out a little bit more? I don't get it. Was Steve Rogers, did he have scoliosis and the secret serum just kind of straightened out that S-shaped spine, thus adding a significant amount of height to his stature? I'm not sure. There's that scene in Captain America 2 where he's in the, you're a foot shorter than Wimpy, Steve, and then he turns into a giant. It's like, how did they explain that? It's like, I would take answers. I would take pseudoscience answers. I would even take you bringing in some weird god who's just like, how does Bruce Banner turn into the Hulk and keep his pants on? That's another question that's been plaguing me for years. And I'm in the films. This is fine. We're so far off topic. I have to stop.
Strong and brave, here to save the American way.
Immediately thereafter, he's put into military-issued uniform where he's used as a propaganda piece. He's wearing essentially a military-made costume, like a theater costume. And then when he gets out there onto the front lines to save his best friend, he takes all that World War II issued gear and kind of throws on a pant and suits, a paratrooper outfit over top of his otherwise ridiculous costume-pieced uniform, tosses on that cheerleader helmet one of the girls is wearing. We're seeing a little bit of the comic inspiration from the ultimate version of Cap from World War II, where he is very real and tactical and gritty, and he's got that triangle shield. It's a very tactical, practical approach to Cap being a soldier and not a superhero, right? And then Howard Stark apparently comes in and makes him a custom-fitted uniform called the Super Soldier suit. It's essentially a paratrooper uniform that's themed after his original kind of propaganda look, because he's still this propaganda piece, but now he's actually out there fighting the good fight and defeating Nazis, or the equivalent of Nazis, the Hydra.
The suit's actually made out of mostly nylon. There's some canvas in there, but it's made out of stuff that the military would make straps. We were trying to get more of like a Kevlar weave sort of feel to it, so it would feel like an actual battle suit.
And I would just kind of come in every couple weeks and try a new outfit on, and they would poke and prod and measure and cut, and I'd kind of stay out of it, and then finally they got it where they wanted it.
It's inspired off of that ultimate version of Cap. Put some gray on the costume, give him some tactical boots, give him a tactical belt, put him in the real life scenario of being a soldier. And so that's kind of where that super soldier costume was pulled right off the page and put into real life. We got Captain America, First Avengers, that's 2011. Next year, everyone's hyped, we're ready to rock and roll. The Avengers are here, led by our new hero, our new champion, Cap. You know, he got thawed out, he woke up. Costuming becomes a very specifically interesting piece of storytelling and character development without you even being remotely aware of it. The costuming that they, use in this film, it allows Cap to be in very modern environments and very easily say to the audience, this is a man who's not of this time, because of his very simplistic design costume. Now, everyone hates this costume. And for good reason, right? It's odd. It's an interesting look. It's a little bright. It's a little weird. It's a little well, let's talk about it. Why is Captain America looking so ridiculous after we had such a cool Captain America from the first Avenger? We had this tactical Cap. We had this guy who was out there. He was prepared. He had leather satchels all over him. What are in all those leather satchels? I have no idea, but things that were gonna stop bad guys. That's what I know. And then we get this new modern Cap, and they kind of Batman him. They give him this like little utility belt with like these little pockets for all of his iPhones, maybe? I don't know. That's what they all are. He's literally wearing a belt full of BlackBerry holsters is essentially what he's doing. But from a storytelling perspective, here's where it gets interesting. Because what this is, Agent Coulson, massive fan of Captain America, right? From the minute he gets on the scene, Agent Coulson's fanboying, he's got the cards, eventually they get blood on him, that's really tragic. But that whole sacrifice is kind of cheapened by the TV show because he's got brought back to life by alien technology. I don't know. The fan that Agent Coulson was of Captain America, he was a fan of the propaganda Captain America. He was being fed that icon from the government to the public because he was just a kid and he was just taking it all in. He was just eating up all of this, like, yeah, he's a superhero. He's the man. He's bright and colorful. He represents America. He's the living embodiment of freedom and the flag and just feeding evil. And so in the storytelling of this film, Agent Coulson designs this costume to be another kind of propaganda icon piece. It ends up being this reiteration of that theatrical costume he had to wear and parade around to, raise money for the government. Like, this is what we imagine is good for you, instead of what is actually practical for a hero to get work done. And we see that very shortly after his appearance in Avengers. Winter Soldier comes out and that costume is gone. It's never spoken of again. Well, in Endgame, they really tear into it, right? And at least they're apologizing by letting us all look at Chris Evans' butt, I guess, is like the apology for how terrible that costume was. But
that is America's ass.
Steve is like, all right, now if you really want me to start kicking some butt and being an asset, I'm gonna need some actual tactical gear. And he starts working for S.H.I.E.L.D. and he gets into this strike uniform, this strike stealth suit. With Winter Soldier, it's inspired off of that super soldier look from the 2010 comics. He had this very neat, all kind of like dark blue commando suit. Because at that point, Steve wasn't Captain America. Bucky had grown up, gotten his big boy pants on, and he was Cap, and he was fighting the good fight. And Steve Rogers was promoted. He was Commander Rogers. In the movie, this whole strike suit it's literally almost exactly that, right? We ditch all of that, the red, white, and blue, and we go very much like stealth, the CIA, a kind of like secret agent kind of look and feel. You can't be Captain America sneaking around, Uganda, dressed in red, white, and blue, getting stuff done.
Yeah, we compromised, sometimes in ways that made us not sleep so well. But we did it so that people could be free. This isn't freedom, this is fear.
We have this strike stealth suit, and it's not Cap anymore, right? We've lost the red, white, and blue. It's a little bit of Cap losing himself in the big machine that is S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. is now issuing him the suit, S.H.I.E.L.D. is sending him on the mission, and who does S.H.I.E.L.D. end up being but the enemy? It turns out that S.H.I.E.L.D. is nothing more than the people he's been fighting against his entire life. And so this suit kind of represents, once again, this guy who's out of his element, out of what he was originally fighting for, out of his time. And when he goes back into that museum and he cracks that case and he puts that poor man's job in jeopardy.
I am so fired.
What he's doing is taking back his identity, taking back his own moral standards. Because before, he was fighting for good. He was fighting with his moral compass. He was fighting for America. And it turned out that S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't America, right? By shedding that otherwise stunningly handsome suit. I think even Chris is like, hey, I look pretty good in this thing. But we had to abandon it so we could get back to the good old US of A, Steve Rogers fighting for what was right. Really kind of a beautiful symbol when you think about this guy recapturing his identity by putting that suit back on and doing what he believes is right, faced up against insurmountable odds, right? I mean, that's the story of Captain America, But don't fret if you really like that suit and how handsome and form-fitting it was with those shoulder straps. He looked really good. It just was it has had really great lines and really great patterns and textures. And this is what's interesting about these costumes, is that they're designed to look like tactical gear, but in practicality, soldiers, Marines aren't doing roundhouse kicks. And so you need to make it look practical and like it exists in reality. but then you have to make it durable and useful to an actor who's playing a superhuman. So there's a reason why it looks so good and it's so practical and wonderful. And it's made of this kind of like neoprene that then has like light layers of other fabrics over top of it. Sometimes it's screen printed in specific ways with specific printed materials to give it the look and feel of a more rugged material, a more rugged and durable fabric. But ultimately, these suits are kind of stretchy. It's kind of like jeggings, you know? There was a short period of time where you couldn't trust jeans anymore. You know what I mean? Because everyone out there, I don't know, are you wearing jeans or are you wearing pajamas? I'm not exactly sure. So it's important to know that while you're looking at all this and everything looks armored, everything looks layered, everything looks Kevlar and tough, really, it's stretchy and comfy for the most part. Everyone really loved that Strike stealth suit from Winter Soldier. And so in Avengers Age of Ultron, they take that exact pattern, they take that exact suit with those, sewn in tasty ab accents, and they just red, white, and blue it. They make it American again, but they don't go so egregious as the first Avengers film. From here on out, this is Cap's suit. This is a suit that we now get from the rest of the MCU on.
Avengers!
So with Avengers 2 Age of Ultron, you see Steve Rogers kind of find his stride. You see him kind of find the true mission, you know what I mean? He's not with S.H.I.E.L.D., and he's honoring his red, white, and blue, kind of heritage in this costume made for him by Tony Stark. He's with the Avengers, who we think are a bunch of like-minded individuals, but the lessons he begins to learn in that film, in that story, start to make him question all of that. But at the beginning of that film, you see that heroic version of Steve in this tactical red, white, and blue suit. It's pristine, it's beautiful. It was this symbol of everything that was good and what he represented and what he thought the team represented, right? It represented him. He was wearing the Avengers branding. He was the front man for the force that saved the world, time and time again. And as the films start to progress on from that tipping point of Tony and that shield around the world and who's responsible for that, you begin to see the costume tell as much story as Chris Evans is, because we have this pristine version of it in Age of Ultron, and then it begins to just deteriorate. The colors begin to fade. We even lose the red, white, and blue. The A from his shoulders are gone because he's not next to Tony Stark, who made it for him originally, who could just toss him a fresh one and help him out. And now the only thing he has left is just to be a hero. As we make our way into Avengers Infinity War, his costume starts to get stripped down and starts to get worn out and starts to get beat up and dirty. And the star is gone. Steve is now this, nomad. A lot of comparisons are often made to that stripped down costume that he wears as this nomad thing. Nomad's got this cape and these big shiny buttons that I'm not really sure what they're for. If you look at the original comic books around issue 450, where Steve gets fired and begins this arc of a man without a country, and he ended up wearing just this black suit. It had nothing on it. It was this symbolless silhouette that he was out there still fighting.
Get this man a shield.
Slowly come to find out is that he's become buddies with the Wakandans, right? He's having a super good time at Wakanda, at Camp Wakanda. He's roasting marshmallows on the fire, the Stay Puft marshmallows. Watch out, Steve.
We used to roast Stay Puft marshmallows by the fire at Camp Wakanda.
Later, if you find yourself on a rooftop, confronted with some terrible demons looking to destroy New York, don't think about your time at Camp Wakanda, man. Think about something a little bit less threatening. Sorry, I had to work that in there. That's the thing that I've been sitting on for a decade. Ray going to Camp Wakanda, roasting Stay Puft marshmallows in the campfire, and then Steve Rogers go to Camp Wakanda and learns how to, defend the world. And that shield maybe pays a little bit of homage to the whole Secret Empire run of, Cap. It's this tactical punching shield instead of just this defensive, hide behind shield.
Okay, how much for the arm?
He gets his buddy a new arm. Lots of great stuff is happening for the Captain America team. And then Endgame rolls around, where now half the world is gone and destroyed. Steve is picking up the pieces. And when he starts to kind of get hope back, when he starts to get the team back together, his rekindling with Stark once again, and he gets this new suit for his triumphant last stand against Thanos, right? And we go all out with this suit, okay? It's got details and layering and levels to it that pull together pretty much the whole story of Cap and the whole story of the MCU. Super awesome suit that finally gives us that chainmail, right? Since the beginning of Cap, he's always had these weird scales and everyone's like, I'm not really sure what that is. Well, that was chainmail. I was like, ooh, that looks good. He looks strong. He looks like he's properly defended. And I'm not talking about like the 70s disco jumpsuits they all wore to time travel in. Him, Chubby Thor, and Tony, they're rocking and rolling in these 3 dynamically fresh and really sharp looking suits. It's Cap reclaiming all of that symbolism of everything that he's always stood for and finally has people around him to stand for as well, right? That star is back on his chest, that A is back on his helmet. He's got the team back together and they're all on a unified mission and he's the champion to lead everyone on their way. And it's a really striking and beautiful final suit for him to be the hero that he is.
Avengers! Assemble.
Man, he's been on a journey. He's had a lot of costumes, hasn't he? It's and lots of inspiration pulled from those comic books. The comic books that have their own unique and massive fandom, completely separate, but yet they're still partnered and sistered in very small threaded ways, such as costuming, right? These characters have iconic looks, and they've gone through many different looks and iterations and design. And so this kind of raises an interesting question now as the MCU is going to continue without Steve Rogers. We've got Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We've got Bucky and Sam. Are we going to see a new Falcon and Winter Soldier like wearing the stripes? It's going to be interesting to see kind of how that evolves because we've seen this happen in the comics, and now let's see how that translates in the MCU. It's going to be interesting to see. I want to know what your favorite and least favorite of these costumes are. I don't know, do you hate the Avengers one as much as everyone else does? I mean, at least now that I've explained it to you, does that make it work a little bit more? I don't know, that Evel Knievel one was pretty good looking. So leave a comment below and then, hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Patreon. Come check out all the stuff that I've got going on. Leave me messages, tell me about what your favorite costumes are. Tell me about what costumes you want me to deep dive into next. And hopefully you enjoyed this celebration of America. The celebration of a man who represents all that is good and free, right? And brave. And thanks for watching, and as always, guys, you rock. So as I'm ramping up the production of new Distories, right, I'm also ramping up my Patreon page where I'm going to have some exclusive podcasts with a bunch of my friends that also you guys probably love. I'm going to have some behind the scenes looks at some of the videos and episodes that we've made. I'm going to have all kinds of really fun stuff. So head on over to patreon.com/DisneyDan and check out the new Patreon. Like those toe socks, but worse. And dirty and unsettling. They're weird. I get it. But I don't want to look at it, is all I'm saying. I don't want to see it. I want to look too closely at it because it's like, ooh. Pick up a fresh pair of boots now at DisneyDan.com.